Shellfish Constable for Gloucester. My primary duties are to manage the shellfish resource in Gloucester, to prevent contaminated shellfish from entering commerce, and to enforce all of the shellfish regulations on the municipal ordinances and state statute. So it's a multifaceted job. It encompasses like science, it encompasses law enforcement, it encompasses fisheries management. Gloucester has about 36,000 acres of shellfish flat. 17,000 of those are prohibited areas where no shellfishing can take place. We have about a 70-mile patrol route. We cover everything from Magnolia up to the Rockport line and all the Annisquam River and a chunk of the Essex River. That's within Gloucester city limits. So I have one deputy part-time. I have two volunteer deputies. We spend the majority of our time on patrol in the field. It's a 24-hour a day job. My phone goes off from 5 in the morning till 10 at night with people with questions. They want to get a permit. They want to report illegal shellfish activity. They're asking questions. They may have seen something. They don't know what it is. Gloucester doesn't have, a marine biologist. So we have contacts with Division of Marine Fisheries. We can follow up with that. We have contacts with the environmental police. We work with NOAA law enforcement. We get called out to some things as random as like a stranded seal, or for instance, that dolphin in the Mill River. And we try to respond to everything. But our primary focus is protecting the shellfish resource and ensuring that contaminated shellfish don't get into commerce. Gloucester is what's known as conditionally approved, which means that you can dig certain times a year in certain places based on water quality. Everything we do revolves around water quality. So you'll see signs around town. You might have seen them, especially on the Little River, that it's closed from May 15th to October 15th, and then it'll reopen October 15th, and then it closes when it rains. So if we get a certain amount of rain, we close it for a certain amount of days. And Division of Marine Fisheries determines that based on the flow of the Annisquam, which is, it empties every molecule of water in 24 hours, and then the rate of depuration of a clam, a soft-shell clam, which is 2 days. So in the main Annisquam River, if we get an inch of rain, closes for 3 days. 1 day to flush out, 2 days for the clams to depurate, and then they're considered safe to harvest again. And in different areas, that's different. So Little River would be, because of the current, slower. Part of Little River is a 5-day closure on an inch of rain. Jones River, it's a 3-day closure on an inch of rain. Mill River is a half inch of rain for 3 days. So I have a phone number that I update, a message that I update. All permitted harvesters are required to call that prior to harvest every day, whether it rains or not. Clamming's become more popular in Gloucester in the last 3 years, 4 years. Currently we have about 250 recreational permits, over 100 one-day permits for non-residents, and 86 permits for commercial fishing. And we're getting a lot more students, kids your age, interested in going commercial clamming. Gloucester does have a student permit license, a student commercial license, that allows school kids from up to college age, from 13 until college age, to go out and dig clams commercially, just like a commercial clammer. We're getting more and more of those. I don't know. Word is getting out. Kids are making some good money right now. The price is about $2.75 a pound. So, but it's a full-time, 24-hour day job. We're out all the time, monitoring the health of the flats, responding to pollution complaints. There's a sewage overflow, we have to go. There's a septic tank overflow, we have to go. Anything that would impact the safety of consuming shellfish, which is our primary goal.
Can you tell us a little bit about red tide?
So 2 years ago, we had a red tide event. It was fairly major. It lasted from about June 21st until the beginning of August. It was rare. It was a rare event. We don't usually get an event like that every 5 or 10 years. And then the National Marine Fisheries is monitoring red tide starting in February. They'll start monitoring it up in Maine. It tends to move south with the Gulf Stream. That's based on water temperature. So the diatom that causes red tide is very temperature sensitive. So when the water temperature reaches a certain temperature, it blooms, and then as the summer goes on and it heats up, it dies off. And so during that time, we're testing shellfish with Division of Marine Fisheries weekly. We'll go dig clams. They need a certain amount of clams. They shuck the meats. They blend them. They inject them into mice, a specific type of mouse, and then if the mouse expires in a certain amount of time, they extrapolate how safe it is for people to consume the shellfish. And that's the only way they can test for red tide. So they'll be monitoring blooms. We'll get updates, and then as it's coming closer to Gloucester or closer to Massachusetts, we start taking more precautions, and we'll start testing further and further and further. So they'll start digging. They have a specific place they dig. It's prohibited to shellfish harvest. It's by Annisquam Yacht Club, and that's where they take all samples. So start with mussels. They'll test mussels. If they show mussels, they'll start testing soft shell clams, and then if it gets into soft shell clams, they close the fishery.
And what about swimming?
It doesn't affect.
Okay.
It's a different type of red tide than you'd experience in Florida. There's no negative impacts to people utilizing the water except consuming shellfish that are contaminated with it. So what they'll do is the clam will filter feed. It'll retain this algae, and then the toxin that's in the algae is called a saxotoxin, and it concentrates in the shellfish meat. And some people say that it's a prehistoric defensive mechanism, because birds will be the first thing that guys will be out digging clams and say, oh, the birds aren't eating the seed. They'll say, oh, red tide's coming. And it keeps the animals can detect, birds, other animals that are predators, the clams can detect it. And then as we test it, we'll test mussels again, and then as the levels go down, they need to get 3 successive tests before they can reopen shell fisheries. So they'll test it, and if it went down below the threshold, they need 2 more tests. But it doesn't affect people except for consuming shellfish. So if we have a red tide bloom here in Gloucester, it's not like a Gulf of Mexico red tide bloom where people have respiratory distress or other, it's specifically consumption of shellfish that are contaminated. It applies to all bivalve shellfish, including scallops and carnivorous snails, which would consume a bivalve shellfish. So around here, our primary carnivorous snails would be the dog whelk, which looks like a periwinkle. It's only about that big. We get a lot of them mistaken as periwinkles by periwinkle harvesters, and moon snails, which can get that big. So the moon snails are still currently prohibited from the event from 2 years ago. No, those signs at Folly Cove are because Folly Cove is a prohibited area. All of the coves, that area is known as N10 out of North Gloucester, and it stretches from the Annisquam Lighthouse to the Rockport line. And all of those coves, except for the southern Hodgkins Cove, are prohibited for shellfish harvest. Yeah, I put them back. I have to keep, yeah.
They're very bright.
Yes.
So I noticed that.
The brighter they are, the more people tend to look at them.
So if people have any questions, they can go onto the website or just call you directly.
My number's on the city website.
Okay.
It rings directly to my cell phone.
Okay.
I answer the phone usually from about 6 in the morning to 9 or 10 at night.
Oh my gosh.
They can text me, they can email me. They can email me through the city contact us website, or they can email me directly at my
Okay.
How
city
did
email.
you become the clam warden? It sounds like it's a lot of knowledge too. Is there clam warden school?
There is a school. There's a 2-week course
Marine biology.
put on by Mass Maritime
Okay.
that is statutorily required for all shellfish constables in Massachusetts.
How long have how long is that program?
The course,
Yeah, the course.
2 weeks.
Yeah, so
2 weeks, and they spend the first week on biology and then the second week on law enforcement.
Wow. And so, how long have you been the warden?
I started with the Harbormaster's office in 2013. I was a commercial officerman by trade.
Oh, okay, that's what I was thinking.
I was working a second job at the Harbormaster's office.
Wow.
I have a degree in environmental studies.
Wow.
And then when
Perfect.
the Harbormaster's office took over the Shellfish department, I became the deputy warden, and then became the full-time warden.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's
Thank
important
you.
for the students, for the kids to hear those steps along the
Yeah.
way.
Wow. Well, thank you so very much for coming and
You're welcome.
sharing all of your knowledge.
It's
I
been a
sure
pleasure.
appreciate it.
I'm TJ Ciarametaro. I'm the Gloucester Harbormaster. I'm here with Sea Scout Ship 5 at Kent's Landing, and today we were discussing green crabs and green crab eradication in the marsh. So happy to be here.
So what is your involvement in the green crabs?
The Shellfish Constable and that department is integrated with the Harbormaster's office. We help administer the grant through the Department of Marine Fisheries, and then as the Harbormaster, charged with all the coastal waters of Gloucester, which is about 65 miles of coastline, all falls under my department and my jurisdiction. So anything that happens inside those tributaries has some level of review or authorization through the Harbormaster's office. So that's my involvement, and just provide as much support as I can for whatever the fishery or case may be.
How does somebody become a harbormaster? Is there a harbormaster school?
There isn't Harbormaster School. I'm a Coast Guard veteran. I did 11 years active duty. I'm still in the reserves. I'm actually the chief of the reserve unit in Gloucester. Coincidentally, as of last October, there is a Harbormaster Training Council, and most of my requirements were filled from being active duty for so many years. Once I became the Harbormaster, I had to fulfill the state requirements, and I went through that process, and I'm certified through the state of Massachusetts. So, go ahead, bud.
What's a harder job, Coast Guard or Harbormaster?
It just depends on what it is. So, the Coast Guard has multi-missions. You could be, environmental protection, pollution agent, or you could be, doing search and rescue. The Harbormaster's office is similar to that, but it's more state and local involvement than federal on a larger scale. So I don't know about harder, but each job has its own, specifics and technicalities that you need to kind of iron out and learn. But it's definitely the cross involvement from training and experience definitely relates in both fields. So.
You have to know about the federal laws as well. Do you collaborate with?
Yeah, we do a lot.
Government?
Yeah, we do. So we work pretty closely with the Coast Guard and pretty much all agencies in Massachusetts, even as a Harbormaster, the Army Corps of Engineers, Coastal Zone Management, Department of Marine Fisheries, local conservation, Shellfish, environmental police, local fire departments. We just did a huge hazmat drill in Gloucester Harbor, so we definitely do a lot of liaisoning and have the port partnerships is what it's called. So everyone has their own specific set of skills, each department. So we try to all work together. You're a fire department, you don't necessarily have boats, or we have boats, but we don't have the EMS staff, so we all work together collaboratively. So.
I've noticed more emergency vans around Cape Ann and emergency boats, like at the fire department in West Gloucester.
Yeah.
Are you collaborating with
Yeah.
that for?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I've never seen. I grew up here.
Yeah.
My kids are sixth generation.
Yeah.
I've never seen those emergency vehicle
Yeah.
areas and boats.
Yeah. So So we work pretty close to the fire department. We have what's called an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. So we provide certain personnel, set of skills and equipment, and then we collaborate with them for on-the-water emergencies. And there's a whole nearshore response plan that the Coast Guard, the Harbormaster, the police chief, and the fire chief all came up with and created a certain set of guidelines for emergency response. For instance, if there's an emergency north of the Blimmen Canal Bridge, the primary medevac point is the Dunfudger boat ramp. If you're south of the bridge, it's Solomon Jacobs Park. So by coming up with these, standard operating procedures. Doesn't matter who's on or what shift, or who's on the watch at the fire department, or who's monitoring 911. If a call comes in, it's a standard set of procedures that everyone knows and is trained on, and that's how you get stuff done quickly and effectively. There's no guessing. You don't have to guess what channel everyone's going to be on. It's all in a guideline and a procedure. So
It must have been hard to go from Coast Guard. I don't know if that was your direct route from Coast Guard personnel
yeah.
to Harbormaster. Like it seems like it's such a big job. Like you're dealing with the public, you're
Yeah.
dealing with emergencies, you're dealing with
All kinds of
the landings.
Yeah,
It's
moorings and landings
like,
and
you must be going
fisheries grants and
nuts.
stuff. Yeah,
Do
so
you have help?
I do have help.
Okay.
And I was going kind of nuts at first, but it's been 5 years now. We have a really solid team. It's definitely not an I, it's definitely a we collaboration. 2 years ago, the city decided to move the Shellfish Constable and the Assistant Constable under the direction of the Harbormaster's office, which has been where it should have been. Most towns, it's already like that. It was under community development in Gloucester, which isn't really the right fit for them. So we're all together down there. There's a deputy harbormaster. I have a clerk. There's 11 assistant harbormasters that are part-time, which you see out on the patrol boats. We have launch operators. We have dock masters. We have people that work the boat ramp. So it's a big department. It's probably full-time, part-time, over 20 people.
Do you have any volunteers that help out?
We really don't have any volunteers specifically for that stuff besides Sea Scouts and you guys, when you guys come to me and want to volunteer to clean up public landings, which is a huge help. It's a huge help to your community. It's a huge help to the environment. It's as small as it seems. There's a relatively large impact with that. So we really appreciate that kind of volunteerism. As far as volunteering to go out on boats and perform duties, it's just we don't have that for a variety of liability and legal reasons. But as far as public landing cleanups and stuff like that, then we do have some volunteers, and you guys are one of them.
My name's Matt Jacobs. I'm a 4th generation clammer. I grew up in Gloucester. I did clams in Essex. Been fishing green crabs for about 8 years. I started back in 2013 when there was no clams around. And basically because it was the green crabs, we had a few warm winters. Basically, if you get a cold winter, the rivers lock up with ice and it knocks down the crab population a lot. And the clams come back. And then, so everyone kind of realized the crabs are making a huge problem eating the seed beds when they come in. When they first settle in, they're only about 1 inch deep, 1/4 inch, and they settle, and the crabs just snip the heads off them, eat them, destroy whole shellfish beds. And so a few of us started crabbing hard back then, and now every fall we fish and catch what we can, and it helps. And I don't know, that's a little bit about green crabs. These are the gear I use. These are just like basic Jonah crab traps. Just one door and a bait bag. It's super basic. And then these are like New York style eel traps that we use. It's got one kitchen, one parlor, basic gear. And yeah, I mean, there's lots of green crabs. They destroy the ecosystem. They wreck the marshes. They burrow caves. That's where they hide in the winters. And that's why some of the marshes are falling off, because they burrow in, make caves.
So, are you crabbing for the green crabs, or are you crabbing to get rid of them?
Mostly to get rid of them. The small markets, not a lot of money in green crabbing. I do it to help, because I do clamming for a living. I make a little money, obviously, what I can. When there's grant money available, it helps. And mostly it's just the markets. That's the biggest thing. If there was bigger markets, you get rid of the crabs.
What do you do with the crabs once you catch them?
Mostly they go to bait markets in New York and New Jersey. In the spring, conch bait down the Cape. They freeze them.
Where did the crabs come from?
Europe, in the ballasts of boats. They've been around since the 1800s.
So on the bottom of the boat.
Supposedly, that's what they say. So they're European green crabs, but they've been around for hundreds of years. But like I said, winters knock down the populations. And now there's fishermen in like every commercial shellfish town has a few guys that do it in the fall, and it helps because we mostly fish around the most productive clam flats, mostly where we fish around to protect the beds. And like he's seen in Gloucester, there's flats that are seeding in that haven't seeded in 20 years.
Well, there are a lot of seeds out here, I
Yeah.
noticed. Yeah, so that's what they're coming for. So when they grow,
They eat everything though. They destroyed mussel beds. There used to be mussel beds all through Gloucester and the Essex River. They're starting to come back, but we just had a warm winter. You know, we had some cold winters, so we'll see what happens.
Is there anything that we can do? Is there anything that people can do? Could we put up a net to cover our
No.
marshes?
I don't know if that'll really work. I mean, people have tried all that stuff.
Oh, they have.
Fishing really helps. Few guys with fixed gear, good amount of gear, can really make a dent up in the rivers. You know?
Well, I noticed in this little tributary, we never used to have the little holes where they burrow. And now we do. And nobody's fishing down this end, so that's what concerns me. Are we going to lose all of our little marsh here? in
No,
this
if I'm
tributary?
fishing right by the land and I'm baiting, so they're coming out. They're coming to the gear. Yeah, I'd say I'm pulling them out of here probably.
You as a fisherman seen the coastal area change, the landscape?
More in Essex Bay with the weather.
And what have you seen in Essex Bay?
Just the erosion of Cranes Beach and the sand coming in the river. That's a big thing. That's climate change. Happened down the Cape a lot, I guess, like Molloy Islands getting destroyed. That's a green crab. It's a dead one.
Doesn't look very green anymore.
This has been cooked in the sun. This was either green, purple, red. This is a male. That's the tail strap is like a triangle. The females are wider. When I catch them, I keep them live in burlap bags, stack them on pallets.
You like,
The burlaps hold the moisture, keeps the crabs alive longer. So when they're stored, piled on pallets, they go to New York and New Jersey for to tog bait, black sea bass. They cut them up and use them as bait on charter boats and stuff. Pretty big markets down there for them. You know, I'll get orders and I'll go fish them, and I can get them no problem. You know what I mean? But I mean, if I could go, I could catch thousands of pounds a day. You know, if the markets were there. You know.
what if we had a neighborhood?
But you can fish
fundraiser?
them out. I've fished areas where, like, when I'm keep fishing, and I'm there's crabs are slowing down, and I can fish the areas out. So that is good. You know what I mean?
The shellfish warden maybe should respond to that for safety reasons and for permitting and stuff.
What you need is a letter of authorization from Division of Marine Fisheries. They issue that to anybody. You're allowed to fish up to 60 traps. The only stipulation is the disposition of the crab needs to be destruction. So you can't release them. You have to catch them, smash them in a bucket, compost them, sell them. The crabs can't go back into the ecosystem. And that's the only stipulation on the letter of authorization. So you're allowed to fish 60 traps. It's labor intensive. You want to buoy them off. You know, you're technically not permitted to fish fixed gear from land, from a dock. It needs to be buoyed off at sea. But I wouldn't have a problem if somebody had a couple of green crab traps off their dock. But I mean, to really make a dent, you'd need to be a wholesale fishery to actually make an impact. 5 or 6 traps isn't going to do it.
But in addition to his work, is all I'm saying.
Yeah,
No,
I mean,
I'm not trying
everybody
to.
everybody that lives on the water should be doing their part.
Right.
The traps, I don't know, what's the trap cost, Matt?
$75, $80.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah.
5 of those.
Yeah.
You know, buoy them off. The bait,
Yeah.
they eat anything for bait.
Right.
Yeah, you just need a letter of authorization for Division of Marine Fisheries. You
Okay.
can apply for that online. They issue it to everybody. Like I said, the only stipulation would be destruction of the crab.
Right on. Perfect.
But the permit that you have, I mean, you paying for the permit also?
It's great. It's a letter of authorization.
And you can sell them with that permit.
You could sell them if you have a market. Yep.
What if you gave them to like Neptune's Harvest or something like that?
You could give them to them. Some compost places will charge you to take them, but
It costs you money to get rid of them.
Yeah. And I've already
I've
asked
done it
them.
all.
They said no.
I've done it all. I've tried it. You need to have 5 food markets one. But
that's the
there's not a lot
main
of meat in
thing.
the crabs.
It sounds like a new market.
That's the main. People have
They've been
tried
talking
it.
about it for 10
It tried.
People have
It's
tried
trying.
it. There's just no having a food market like as a delicacy. You know, promote them as they did dogfish back in the 80s. Would be the way to go, but I mean, there's very limited meat. You need a huge quantity of crabs, and it's labor intensive, and it's in coastal waters. It's not like lobstering where you can have 8, 10, 20 guys fishing. I mean, in the river, you're putting buoys pretty much the length of the river, so it does pose somewhat of a hazard to navigation to have multiple gear. We have Matt and Phil, maybe one other guy that'll go out there and make a venture at it, but for the most part, these guys are fishing, 100 traps or so.
Yeah.
And that's,
individual traps.
there's not,
everywhere. It is a
there's
hazard.
not much that the Anasquam can sustain beyond that, just from a navigation standpoint.
Maybe some more grant money would be the best way to go about
There is a grant. There is a grant by the Division of Marine Fisheries that they put out for green crab predator eradication. They didn't get it this year because of the coronavirus. The budget was being approved piecemeal, but for the last 3 years that I've been doing as the shellfish warden, we've had a grant that, and then that you tally what you catch, your landings, submit it to Marine Fisheries, you have proof with your sales slips, and then they compensate the fishermen an extra approximately 30 to 40 cents a pound.
I think we had some more questions.
Yeah, the fellow in the blue shirt had a question.
A way you could probably make it safer for navigators is if you daisy chain the traps together, there's less of a footprint with the buoys.
They put them in a trawl.
Yeah, or just
It's hard in the rivers, and there's only little holes you're fishing that are the size of this truck. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're
It's
not
not
fishing.
like open
They're not
ocean.
fishing over a piece of bottom. They're fishing. They're targeting certain areas where the crabs tend to congregate, so they can only fit 1 or 2 traps in some places.
Right, some creeks I'm fishing in are as wide as this.
And they're hand hauling. They're hand hauling these. Each
They're
of
in
these-
small boats.
They're in small boats. They're hauling them out of 14, 16-foot tin boats. So they're hand hauling the traps. There's nowhere to put a trawl on a deck and then set back.
The creeks are tight. And the main channel, which would be a huge navigation. If I went down the center of the Anasquam,
Yeah, you can't do it.
can't do it. There's hundreds of boats going through there every single day. So I'm up against the bank and in tight creeks.
And most of the time, the traps at low tide are visible.
Exactly, yeah. And they become exposed at low tide. There's 6, 8 feet of water, shallow.
Yeah, so they're fishing primarily in an intertidal area for these.
Yeah, so it's tough.
could you do it on like, I know that you do it in here, but I've seen them like green crabs on the outside edge too, like on the coast. Could you do it on the coast too?
You know, I've tried to set gear in the harbor and stuff, and there's not. They're in the marsh, the salt marsh, and the creeks and the mud flats.
It's their primary habitat.
Yeah, they're not out in the. There is crabs out there, but not like abundance like up in the salt marshes. I've tried Salem Harbor, Beverly Harbor, thinking they would be up there, and they're up in where the steam, where all the food is where they're.
Yeah, where all the clams
where the
are.
clams are, the mussels, oysters. That's where the green crabs are.
So we missed the beginning. Do you make these traps?
I don't make them. I buy them. I fish them. These are,
And do you do it for the money or for the cause or both?
mostly for the cause, but for the money a little, I guess too.
So it's lucrative?
Not really.
No.
I dig clams for a living. This protects the shellfish.
Oh,
there.
gotcha.
So for instance, I'm not good at arithmetic here, but if Matt catches 1,000 pounds of green crabs in a day, that's about a dozen crabs per pound, maybe a little more or less depending on the size. And each of those crabs can eat 50 sea clams a day.
Wow.
So in one day, he's protecting 650,000 sea clams from being consumed
That's nuts.
by the crabs, and that's in one day. And then he fishes. What do you fish? About 2 months?
Yeah, usually about 2 months in the fall.
So 60 days
Is that
times
because of restriction?
650,000.
No, just markets to get rid of the crabs. You know, I'm
Yeah.
go when I get called for orders. You know.
We've seen a massive reseeding of the Anasquam River.
Mussels too.
Mussels, soft shell clams, razor clams.
Marsh, receding of
Yep.
the marsh.
Yeah, absolutely.
So their primary prey in the Anasquam would be juvenile bivalve shellfish. And
So
so
you gotta go.
we have a fairly soft shell clam and razor clam are probably Gloucester's 4th most lucrative seafood fishery. We have 86 permits issued this year, with probably 40 of them actively fishing daily. And there's a massive amounts of soft shell clam from rice seed size to just under legal size. We've had about 10 seedings in the past 2.5 years.
Well, it's good that it's not the fishing's been helping.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, thank you.
100%.
Fishing's been helping.
Yeah. So does anyone else do this?
Every time, every shellfish town, basically Gloucester, Ipswich, Essex, Raleigh, Newbury has a few fishermen in each town. That's shellfish gang. That's basically all the rivers can handle with the amount of gear and stuff.
Do you have another question?
Right, maybe you could do a shellfish farm that grinds up the green crabs as food for the clams.
Oh, for the clam?
Yeah, like a fish farm.
Yeah. It'd be a lot of work and a lot of money for really.
In the Caribbean, they like hunt those lionfish. Like, they're taken over down there. They came out of the Atlantis filtering system. I guess they're an African fish, and they're eating everything. And the communities like go out and hunt them, and then they all like cook them and eat them.
They actually taste really good.
This is a fishery
we do it
that
a lot
anybody,
down south. Yeah.
Anybody
They're
can get
up here
involved
too.
in.
They're in Jersey.
There's no
It's
commercial
a
fishing
lionfish.
permits required. Anybody can get a letter of authorization from Marine Fisheries, buy some crab traps, set them, but it's labor intensive.
Yeah.
It's a labor intensive fishery.
But if everyone did it like collaboratively, or like a lot of people did it, maybe it could make a difference.
It's a long. We're seeing long term results. It's not something that one summer with 5 traps, is going to correct. I mean, this is a wholesale commercial fishery he's involved in, and it's labor intensive.
So if we caught someone, could we call you to sell them?
Hey, good. I don't know if I'm gonna run
So-
over for 50 cents.
Yeah.
What if we deliver?
So the problem is, so these guys are fishing X amount of traps in the river and in these creeks that are super tidal. So you can't have 25 guys with 60 traps because they'd be on top of each other. Boats wouldn't be able to navigate, so on and so forth. So there is a grant program that Pete spoke about earlier, which is a supplemental, which kind of entices, X amount of cents per pound for fishermen to actually go out and do this, because he's tied up in a lot of, money monetarily. $60 a trap, 60 traps, $4,000 worth of gear, plus replacing it, gas, fuel, the boat, the time. So these guys that are doing this, these clammers that are doing this, are protecting their own fishery. It's almost like lobstermen when they V-notch females and put them back to ensure future generations of
it's a
the
conservation
fishery.
measure.
So it's a conservation measure. The best part that you could do is, if you run into people on the Conservation Commission, local politicians, is entice them, write letters to Marine Fisheries to get more grant money to help supplement the fishery, so these guys can actually go out, because protecting the resource is all fine, but at the end of the day, people need to be compensated and get paid for what they're doing. Time's not free.
What about GMGI? Are they doing anything that you know of, Matt? Or?
No, it's a totally separate situation.
Okay.
So this is permitted entirely through Division Marine Fisheries.
So last year there was a grant. It's administered from the state and runs through our department. And then Pete goes out, verifies catch, gets slips from them, and then they get supplemented price per pound only to a certain amount of money. And it's not a lot. I think one year was like $10,000 total for the entire season.
That's the cap on a grant.
That's a cap.
That's the cap.
So if that was $50,000, you would have, it'd be more enticing for these guys to go out and continue fishing throughout the season. I'm pretty confident that if over the 5 years that you guys have really been doing it here and I've been involved in it, you can definitely see, they've made an impact on the green crab. You're starting to see mussel beds come back. I haven't seen those since I was a kid. In the Annisquam, people thought it was seaweed, but it's not. It's mussel beds all up in the creeks. So hopefully, we kind of lobby, if you will, every year with Marine Fisheries to try to get more grant money to make it more enticing for these guys to go out and do the eradication. But they're definitely making an impact. So last year there was no grant money because of COVID and reallocation of funds, but hopefully it'll be back this year, and we're gonna obviously try to continue to get more funding.
Yeah, it's a labor intensive fishery. It's one of those things where the financial incentive is going to keep guys like Matt out there fishing. And if he's out there fishing, we're noticing in 3 years, clams coming back, shellfish coming back. That in places that they ordinarily weren't, historically, wouldn't take a seeding, and now they're taking a seeding. So
what you're saying is the best thing to do is to support the said fishermen
Sure.
that are already doing the work.
Yeah.
So
that would be my suggestion. Is anybody can go get these traps, but it's an investment and it's a time investment. So if you're not going to follow through, there's guys that are doing it for a living that are affected, they're putting a dent in the crab population.
And if you put these traps all along the edge, say, for instance, would that be drawing crabs away from Matt's traps?
No.
No?
They'll
it's
go
not
to the
gonna-
not a handful. They'll go to the there's enough of them.
Okay.
Okay. There's enough of them. Let's go with it.
but they'll get filled with
You
muck.
could mix the shells with concrete to make them more efficient bricks. Like, that's like caustic. Because these crabs are insanely cheap, so you could probably just take the shells and just crush them up into concrete.
Interesting concept because of the calcium.
My kids thought of
Maybe.
them.
I don't know anything about mixing concrete, so
The market is the big thing. Finding a market beyond a bait market. His bait market is out of state, so there's no in-state demand for these crabs.
Well, and I'm sure too, if he catches them all, somebody wants to put together a manufacturing plant to grind them up for fertilizer, but then we crab them out, then you have this facility that has basically
you have
become
to find
obsolete.
an existing use.
I've had people
Right.
contact me to use them for compost, use them for animal feed. They have horse farms up in Ipswich or in the Merrimack Valley. They wanted. They were like, "Oh, can we buy green crabs?" But they've never followed through.
Do they want them alive or dead?
They don't. They grind them up and they use them for feed.
Oh, so they do grind them up.
But they want to charge the fishermen for giving them the crabs.
Take 'em.
Compost places were the same way. Well, we
Right.
these guys. He's a fisherman. He's a professional fisherman. It's his job. This is his livelihood. He shouldn't be selling. He shouldn't be, paying to dispose of his catch.
Right.
So there need to be a market that benefits both the fisherman because he's doing a service to all of Gloucester's coastal ecosystem, and at the same time, a local market to dispose of crabs. But they're doing pretty good right now.
Yeah.
They're an effective. Him and his partner are an effective team.
How many did you say there are in Gloucester that are doing it? How many fishermen?
2.
Just 2 in the whole of Gloucester, and you're not just concentrating on the Anasquama Little River, or
Well, I'm in the whole entire Anasquama.
You
every,
are.
Every creek.
so we need our own. Yeah, we need somebody almost. We need more. Do we need more?
I don't know.
Fishermen?
I don't know.
I'm in every single.
because they're already they've got it covered. They've got it smothered. I mean,
I'm in
We
every
need to
creek in
sponsor
Gloucester.
them.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too.
Ultimately, more gear is going to end up being detrimental because it's going to pose a hazard to navigation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think it's just the gear that I have, I can catch way more.
And so do you
I
go?
just go when I get market.
And you go all along Anasquam,
I'm
down
in Mill
to Jones
River,
Creek?
Jones's River, Little
Oh,
River,
great! Wow.
the Sandbar, the tracks, the
everywhere.
Dang.
He's everywhere.
How many traps do you own?
What's that?
How many traps do you own?
Oh, me and my partner both fish 50, 60 traps each. So we fish about 100 in the water, but we have well over 100 traps.
That's a lot.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of
Yeah.
buoys.
Wow.
If there was a
Okay,
bigger
thank you.
market, he would fish more.
I could go twice a day.
Right.
He's filling his traps in a set. He can haul them and go back out in the afternoon and haul them again.
Wow.
But there's no demand for the catch. That's the problem.
Yeah, that's what.
This
that's
is like
what we gotta
one
do, kids.
day in the Little River.
What's your boat called?
Whoa.
Oh, it's only a skiff. It's a little
Oh,
boat.
okay.
It's just a
So
skiff.
that's
So we
that's what
can't
we
look
have to
out
figure
here.
out.
That's like 24 hours.
It's just a little
Wow.
And that's just the Little
We're only
River.
fishing in 6, 8 feet of water.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we
Listen,
could
yeah.
perhaps-
He's probably got a way better ones than that. I just went down and
Yeah.
saw him one day.
Yeah,
I got-
we do need some pictures.
Yeah, well, I think those are great ideas.
I think they are
Keep
great
thinking of
ideas.
them. You're going to innovate this industry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, at least try.
So if more traps is detrimental, what can people do?
Markets.
The market.
Yeah.
The primary
Or a
handicap.
grant. If there was more
Yeah.
grant money, then
Yeah.
If I didn't have a bait market to go to, I would still fish for the 40 cents. But then I just got to figure out like where I'm gonna go. What am I gonna do with 10,000 pounds of crab?
Yeah.
So are the crabs edible, or are they just mainly bait?
They are edible, but they're hard. There's not a lot
There's
of
nothing in
there's
them.
nothing in them.
It's labor intensive to process them, and it's not cost effective.
Exactly.
And he's a clammer by trade, and clams are in high demand. So
Last summer I caught 2 striped bass with green
With
crabs.
green crabs, yeah.
But they're not bad baits.
They do eat them. They do eat them, but they're not knocking down the population of them around here.
I know lobster, people that lobster, why don't they get the thing so then they can just take the green crab?
They're not catching them in the same
Yeah,
place.
they're a different area. They're more offshore.
I mean, I've when I had my crab house there a few years ago, near Molloy, we had like probably 2 or 3 green crabs in there.
He's getting
he's
thousands
catching
at a time.
thousands
Yeah.
at a time.
Yeah, and that thing, I'm catching probably 500-600 crab to trap.
That's awesome.
You know.
It's not my fault. It's on the wrong track.
Yeah, maybe in the fall when I'm fishing, you guys can come see what a full trap looks like.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
So the season for you is the fall?
That's when the bait markets are down in New York and New Jersey and stuff, yeah. And the rivers slow down a little with boat
Yeah.
traffic. I mean, I kind of
yeah.
wait till after Labor Day. There's just so many boats in the rivers and stuff.
What do you use for bait?
Pogies, haddock racks. Ipswich Shellfish gives good deals on bait for green crab trappers. Whatever we can get for cheap or free.
So they'll eat like anything, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah, you leave them in there long enough, they'll eat each other.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, there's your answer then. Like, just...
Oh, what, for bait? Yeah, that's about what I got for green
Do you
crabs.
get anything else in the crab traps besides the green crabs?
If the lobster gets in there,
Yeah.
it scares the green crabs. It won't go. I mean, they'll still get in, but it won't fill up.
Yeah.
Spider crabs sometimes, Jonah crabs, sand crabs. They're all in there. Yeah, they're gross.
We got 2 in the trap last summer. One of them was dead, the other one ate it.
Yeah, they look like big spiders. They're gross. Starting to see. There was actually seen more of them in the Annisquam this last fall. Interesting. Yeah, that's green crabbing.
I'm Judy Rose. PAL is an organization that we started here in Gloucester because we noticed that wherever we go, we see trash. A lot of people don't see trash, but I see trash. All my sisters see trash, and we really want to clean up the streets of Gloucester. And we were going around trying to help with all the other little organizations that are around that try to keep the city clean as well. And we realized we really weren't getting anywhere, and we thought, what can we do to help fix this problem? And so we came up with PAL, and our goal is to get people to just take care of the space in front of their house. So what we've encouraged is to hand out these yellow bags and let people know that they can get them at the DPW for free. And you leave it out in front of your house behind a wall or just somewhere handy so that when there is trash in front of your house, you pick it up, you put it in your yellow bag. When the yellow bag is full, you call the DPW and they'll come and pick it up. So we're just letting everybody know, look, you may not have put that trash there, but the trash on the streets is everybody's trash, and it's our responsibility to clean it up. So this is something that we've been doing for a couple of years now, and we would love someday to be able to drive down the road, go to an open space, and see no trash, just beauty. So we encourage people to have these in your cars. These kids, have these in your cars, so when you go to your open space, you put, and you see a can or any little piece of trash, micro trash, cigarette butts, whatever, keep it in your trunk, and you can, help clean up Gloucester. So be a PAL. And PAL stands for People Against Litter.
But it's
be a PAL.
also people about love for our beautiful home port. And because it's just such a beautiful place, my kids are 5th generation Cape Ann. We have to love where we live, and charity starts at home, and volunteering starts at home. So as long as we can clean up the area in front of our home and then expand that to our neighbors. It actually introduces us to our neighbors, like out shoveling snow in the winter. During recycle days is when I find there's the most trash on the street. So picking up after the recycle truck has gone by, just going out in your neighborhood and cleaning up, because the wind often takes the recyclable out and the seagulls. And so yeah, just like I said earlier, many hands make for light work.
Right. So if you go to our website, which is palgloucester.com, we have a map on there. You sign up to clean up in front of your house. You put your name. Your name is actually optional, but if you sign up to clean up giving your address, then we put a pin on the map, and you can blow that pin up and see all of the people of Gloucester that have actually signed up to clean up in front of their house. And I do believe that we're making a difference. So please go to palgloucester.com and sign up to clean up in front of your house.
So I have a question. If you wanted to walking around in your park and you want to clean up trash, but you also want to be safe, especially with COVID, I've been seeing more trash, like masks
Yes.
and things like that. How can you pick it up safely and be more safe?
Well, we when we do pick up cleanups, a lot of times we'll bring the little pickers.
But we wear gloves
But we
as
do wear
well.
gloves, yes, because I mean, the trash is filthy. Straws, you don't want to be picking up that stuff. But yeah, it's best to just use rubber gloves. So in your trunk, it's good to have not just the yellow bag, but also a stash of plastic gloves.
And also one of the biggest trash is masks.
Oh, well, that's
actually
now, yeah.
the COVID masks, and they're clogging up the drains as well. So
And rubber gloves too.
Yeah.
I can't believe how much I see that now. It used to just be nips, cigarette butts, straws, Dunkin' Donut cups, but now it's...
So we definitely highly recommend they wear rubber gloves for sure, or get the pickers.
But the biggest thing is whether you're in your front yard, whether you've parked at the store, whether you're at the beach or in some other open space, if you see trash, pick it up, because trash, it's everybody's trash, and it's not going away unless somebody picks it up. It's not the DPW's job, it's not the City of Gloucester's job, it's our job.
All of our
It's our
jobs, yeah.
trash, we have to clean it up. So nobody likes to do that, but if you have a neighborhood or an area that is particularly troublesome, you can reach out to Pal Gloucester, and we will form a little group and come and help you. So all we ask is that you form a group, and we will bring a group, we'll bring yellow bags, and we'll help clean an area
Quick
up.
fix. You want to talk a little
And
bit
there's
about
also
that?
C-Click Fix, which everybody probably knows about. That's on the Gloucester website. If you see that, you know, there's a particular area that needs assistance, you can C-Click Fix it. There's an app, and it's on the website. And you can report it basically to the DPW if somebody's dumped a mattress or a chair somewhere. That's what that's for. But also, once you fill your yellow bag, you put it near any telephone pole in Gloucester, and the DPW will pick it up. You do have to hide it though when it's not full, because if it's anywhere remotely close where they can see your yellow bag, even if it's half full, sometimes they'll take it. So it's important to make sure that you fill your bag up real good before you put it in a visible place, and DPW will come pick it up. But also on the C-Click Fix, there is an icon that says yellow bag pickup. So thanks so much for listening, you two.
And I'm going to talk a little bit about Neptune's Harvest. It's an organic fertilizer. Neptune Organic Fertilizer is located down at the fort. And Ann Molloy is on the team of Neptune's Harvest, and she gave me a write-up to talk a little bit about it. But I personally use Neptune Harvest for my garden, and it's amazing. So Neptune's Harvest is an amazing organic fertilizer made right here in Gloucester. They use the fish remains, gurry, to make the products, which allows them to use 100% of the fish and not waste anything. 60 to 70% remains after you remove the part we eat, and this part was being brought back to the sea and dumped when they got this great idea. So we're really helping to keep the oceans clean as well, because back in the day when our family fished, the ocean was filthy. So now they're taking the gurry out of the ocean and using it for Neptune's Harvest. The Indians used fish when they planted their corn, so they knew it made great fertilizer. The sample bottle you're getting as seaweed is in it also, which has a lot of benefits as well. Fish and seaweed have all the nutrients plants and soil need in nature's perfect balance. The whole world used to be under ocean water, so it makes sense the soil would benefit from the nutrients in our ocean. Someone used this fertilizer last year to grow a 2,350 pound pumpkin. Holy moly, that's massive. So you mix 1 ounce per gallon of water and feed your plants once a week. Don't store it diluted. Make sure you only mix what you use right up. If you have 2 plants that are similar, use it on one and not the other so you can really see the difference. In this way, better than chemical fertilizer like Miracle-Gro because it feeds the biological life of the soil instead of destroying. You can feel really good about helping the environment when you use this organic fertilizer. And as you know, the runoff all goes to the river and the ocean. So it's another reason why we want to use organic substances. So Neptune's Harvest, we're so grateful and thankful. Keep our gardens beautiful and our food healthy, and Mother Earth is grateful.